We are still in the chapter of writing the equations of lines, but today we are looking at two very specific lines. So the two lines that we're looking at are called parallel and perpendicular. These are two words that I am sure you have heard before, and we're going to talk a whole lot about them today, so that way you have a better understanding of how to graph parallel and perpendicular. So if I look at my first example, we want to graph these two lines. So now that we've been graphing lines for the last 2 weeks, you should know that we always begin with our y-intercept. Our y-intercept for this graph is a positive 1. So on my y-axis, I put a dot on the number 1. An ordered pair is sitting on the y-axis at 1. Then I have a slope. My slope is my rate of change. It's the number in front of the x. The 2 is the same as 2 over 1 because 2 divided by 1 is the same as just 2. So what we do is it's positive, so we're going to rise 2 to the right 1. Rise 2 over 1. Same thing other direction, fall 2 over 1. Fall 2 over 1, fall 2 over 1. So that's my first line. My second line also has a y-intercept, but this one the y-intercept is at -3. And this one has a slope. The slope is in front of the x. It's a 2. 2 is the same as 2 over 1. So I go up 2, right 1, up 2, right 1, up 2, right 1, up 2, right 1. So if you notice, these lines are never, ever, ever going to touch. They are called parallel. The reason why they don't touch is because their pattern of rise over run is the same pattern for both. What that means is that because the slope number is the same, then these lines are parallel. So a parallel line means that they will never ever touch, and they're parallel because their slopes are the same. So the number in front of the x is exactly the same for both equations, and their y-intercepts were two different numbers. Same slope with a different back number made it parallel. So in the notes section of this page, it says, what do you notice? We notice that the slopes are the same, and we notice that the lines do not touch. They do not cross, they do not intersect, they are parallel. Next box. What is the slope of the line parallel to? So what that's saying is that if I had a graph that was y equals 3x plus 5, it says any line that is parallel to this line, any line that is parallel to this original line would have what slope? So what slope would all of these lines have? So we said that the slopes would be the same. So the same slope would have to be the number 3. And number 2, in front of the x is a negative. That's actually a -1. There's an invisible 1 right there. So this slope is -1. Number 3, the slope parallel is the number 1/2. Number 4, 1x on this page. So the slope that would be parallel would have a 1. Number 5, any line with a slope of -3 over 4 would be parallel to that original line. Okay, so all this box is saying is that we need to know that parallel means the same slope. So we found the slope. That slope would be parallel if it is the same slope. The lines would be parallel. So now we're going to tie in what we've been doing in class for the last 2 days. It says write the equation of the line parallel to y equals 3x plus 5. So again, y equals 3x plus 5 is a line that looks like this. So the question is, I need the equation of the line that goes through the ordered pair 1, 4. 1, 4 is not on this line. It's a different point that would be sitting on a different line. So what they want to know is what is the equation of this line that is parallel to this, but it goes through the point 1, 4. So the way that we do that is I'm still going to start with my information box, just like we did in the last day, in the last page. So in this here, the M, if it is parallel, it means I take the slope. Parallel means same slope. So I pull the slope off of that line. Once you pull the slope, you no longer need this equation. The B is not on that line. So now we do what we did last time. This is X, this is Y, this is M. So we have Y equals MX plus B. We're writing the equation. Anytime it says write the equation, we write down Y equals MX plus B. So my Y value is a 4, my M is a 3, my X is a 1, and I'm solving for B. I don't know what the y-intercept is of this line that had that slope. So to solve, 4 equals 3 times 1 is 3 plus B. Get B by itself by subtracting the 3 from both sides. 4 minus 3 is the number 1. So now that I have a slope and I have a y-intercept, the equation of my line is y equals 3x plus 1. So let's do the same thing with letter B, and then I want you to try C on your own. So again, we need the equation. An equation will have an M equals, and it will have a B equals. In my original line, we are taking the slope. Parallel means take the slope. Once you take the slope, we're going to get rid of that line. I don't care about that anymore. I have the slope. We're good. But I do need these points to be able to plug them into y equals mx plus b. So y is 6, m is -1, x is -2 plus b. -1 times -2 is 2 plus b. Get b by itself by subtracting 2 on both sides. 6 minus 2 is the number 4. Now that I have a slope and a y-intercept, the equation of my line is y equals -1x plus 4. Go ahead and try letter C. Okay, so in letter C, I can tell you the answer is going to be y equals 1/2 x, because that's the slope. This point, this ordered pair, where there's a y value that sits behind a 0, that's called the y-intercept. So the y-intercept is 8. So in this one, my back number is an 8 because there was an 8 behind a 0, which made it the y-intercept. 0, 8 is the y-intercept. So that is the y-intercept. You could have solved it by hand. You also would have gotten a positive 8. Okay, so when you're ready, go ahead and flip to the back. So now we know that parallel means same slope. Same slope, parallel. So we move into our second type now. The second type is something called perpendicular. So very similar to parallel, we are going to graph our lines. So in this one here, it says begin at 1, okay? My y-intercept is a positive 1. It says move with the slope -1/2. Because it's negative, we're going to drop down 1, and then we're going to go to the right 2. Down 1/2. Down 1/2. So that's the equation of my first line. Second line, begin at -3. This slope is different. This slope is a positive 2. 2 is the same as 2/1. So I graph this by going up 2 and over 1. Up 2/1, up 2/1, up 2/1. And I graph it. So now what you need to know is that perpendicular is a word that hopefully you remember from like elementary school. But perpendicular does not just mean that they cross, like obviously these lines cross each other, but they don't just have to cross, they have to create a 90-degree angle. They have to cross at 90 degrees. If you look at how they cross in a perfect T. They cross in a perfect 90-degree angle. So that's why this is called perpendicular. These two lines are perpendicular because they cross at a 90-degree angle. So now again, when we're looking at parallel and perpendicular, we are looking at the word slope. So we said when they're parallel, they have the same slope. But when they're perpendicular, what do you notice about our slopes here? So how it works is we have 1 over 2 for this line, and we have 2 over 1 for this line. So the numbers flipped. That's called the reciprocal. 1 over 2 flipped and became 2 over 1. Then one has a negative sign, and one is a positive slope. So how we're going to write that is that the slopes have opposite signs and they are flipped. Another word for flipped is the fancy word reciprocal. Can I spell reciprocal? Something like that, reciprocal. So in this one here, the slopes have opposite signs. One of my slopes was negative 1 over 2. Opposite signs. The other was 2 over 1. This one was negative. This one is positive. That's what opposite signs mean. Flipped means the numbers, it was 1 over 2, and now it's 2 over 1. Opposite signs. So these lines cross, or the word intersect, to be a little bit fancier. These lines intersect at a 90-degree angle. So when they crossed at a perfect 90-degree angle. That's what it means to be perpendicular. One way to remember this, to be silly, one of the old teachers used to say, perpendicular means that it's a flipping change. So it's a flippin' change. You gotta flip it and you gotta change the sign. Perpendicular is a flippin' change. Flip it and change the sign. So let's get our perpendicular slopes from these lines. So in this one, the slope was 3. Remember, 3 is the same as 3 over 1. So the slope perpendicular is a flip and change. So flip would make it 1 over 3. Change, it was positive, so now it has to be negative. Perpendicular is a flip and a change. Next one, negative 1 is the same as negative 1 over 1. So if we were to flip it, the numbers are 1 over 1. It's still the same. But we have to change it. It was negative, so now it's positive. 1 over 1 simplifies to just the number 1. Flip and change. Next one, easy. 1 over 2, we need to flip it. So when we flip it, it's a 2 over 1. Now we need to change it. It was positive, so now it needs to be negative. Negative 2 divided by a 1 is the number negative 2. Number 9, flip those numbers. 1x is a 1 over 1. When you flip it, it's still just 1 over 1, because we still flip those numbers. They're just the same. But it used to be positive, so now it has to be a negative. Number 10, very easy. We need to flip it. So when we flip it, it becomes a 4 over 3. We need to change it. It was negative, so now it's a positive. So perpendicular is a long word, so we need to do the longer step, which I call flip and change. Flip it and change the sign. So let's try writing the equation of just 2 of these. How nice of me. All right, so in this one here, again, information box. Anytime it says write the equation, I always draw an information box because it makes me know that I need my M and I need my B to write the equation of a line. I have to have a slope and a y-intercept in order to write the equation of a line. So in this one here, perpendicular does not mean steal the slope. It means find the slope. Perpendicular is a flip and change. Flip and change. I flipped the numbers and I changed it to a negative. So I now know the slope, but there's no y-intercept for this line that would cross and be able to have the 0.64. So from the old equation, all I did was take the slope, I flipped it and changed it for a perpendicular slope. So now I have the equation y equals mx plus b. I have an x, I have a y, so I can plug it in. 4 equals negative 1/3 x plus b. 6 times negative 1/3 is the same as saying 6 divided by negative 3. That's the number negative 2. If fractions are difficult for you, grab a calculator and double check it. So now to solve for b, we need to get b by itself, so we're going to add 2 here, and we're going to add 2 here. 4 plus 2 is the number 6. I have a slope. I now have a y-intercept. My perpendicular equation that passes 6 comma 4 is the equation y equals negative 1/3 x plus 6. Go ahead and try letter E. I'll start you off with letter E though. In letter E, we start by needing a slope and we need a y-intercept. So my current slope is a negative 1/1, which means my perpendicular slope, if we flipped a 1/1 and we changed the sign, it was negative, so now it's positive. 1 divided by 1 is just a positive 1. I no longer need this. I do, however, need an x and a y. Y equals mx plus b. Nowhere on here does it say b. So we're solving for b. So go ahead and try letter E and see what you get. So my answer is y equals 1x, which is the same as x, plus 8. Very easy. Okay, let's flip to the back. Next page. So now you are going to go ahead and practice each of these. On this front side of the page, you are doing parallel. So on this page, I need you to write parallel means it's the same slope. Parallel means same slope. So what that means is, again, pull your m and your b because we're writing the equation, so those are what I need. Same slope means take the old slope, it was a 3. Now cross that line out. Now use your new x and y and your slope of 3 to be able to solve for b. By the end of today, you should be really good at writing the equation given a point and a slope because you have done this for 3 days now, so it should be very easy. You take your y equals your m, x plus b, solve for b. So in this page, you are going to go ahead and try these and see what the equation, your final equation will be in the form y equals something x plus something. Might be a minus. Okay, so that's your final answer will look like that. It's called slope-intercept form because it will give you a slope and it will give you a y-intercept. When you get to a stopping point, let's just take a quick look at the back. So on the back perpendicular, perpendicular is the word flip and change. It's a flip-in change. So to get the perpendicular slope, we're going to need to flip it and change it. So in this one, the old slope was a negative 2, which is the same as 2/1. So we flip the numbers, 1/2. And we change the sign. It was negative, so now it's a positive 1/2. Plug all of that in. We now have an x and a y. We no longer need this. Goodbye. Okay, so go ahead and try a couple of perpendicular equations. So today, very easy. You're writing the equation of a line parallel, meaning they have the same slope. And we're writing the equation of lines that are perpendicular, which means that they are flip and change. Flip and change is the same as the phrase opposite reciprocal. If I can spell it right, reciprocal. Close enough. This is why I teach math. So opposite reciprocal. Opposite means you change the sign. Reciprocal means you flip the numbers. So flip and change or opposite reciprocal, they mean the same thing. Flip them and change their sign. Very easy. Go ahead and try through these. If you're struggling at all, your teacher will have tutorials again on Wednesday. So make sure that you start this 9 weeks with a nice high grade so that way you can get a good average for your first semester, which is the first grade that counts for your GPA. Okay, so if you are struggling with any of this writing the equation stuff, then show up at lunch and they'll definitely help you get through it. If you need any help, don't be afraid to ask.